In the opening monologue in his play, As You Like It, William Shakespeare's character, Jacques, utters that timeless and familiar wisdom which nearly all likely recall. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. He goes on to describe what are called the 7 ages of man, which I will not do, but instead describes several parts or roles which are known to many and played in various ways throughout life. The parts and roles we play all have their associated identities, and most their own designated titles. Each comes with norms and expectations that derive from cultural customs and family traditions. And quite often, if these norms and expectations are not met, we experience consequences and sanctions that are intended to encourage and reinforce adherence, order, and social conformity. Now, depending on the span of life and the various lanes along which we travel, we assume many identities and play a surprising number of roles. Some appear highly significant. Some are short-lived and seemingly coincidental. Some seem to take on a life of their own and are longer lasting. Some end and then begin again. But all, except one, are temporary, and that one is unseen, eternal, and beyond time and space. So much can be said and questioned about the whys and wherefores of sanctions and expectations and the imperative for conforming behaviors in families, organizations, and societies. But the key questions for me are, do these roles, identities, these norms and expectations conform to common sense, the common good, and to the universal human values of truth, right action, peace, love, and nonviolence? And are they designed, applied, and intended to foster fairness, cooperative community, contentment, and happiness for individuals, families, and society? When we are born, we innocently enter the theater of life, already assigned several inherited identities. We may take stage as a daughter, a son, a granddaughter or grandson, and perhaps even a great-granddaughter or grandson. And we may come on in the role of a brand new sister or brother, cousin, niece, or nephew. We also enter with a nationality, an ethnicity, and are even assigned to some antiquated and socially constructed class or racial category. For some, it is also important to note that we will have an astrological sign and can be identified as a Libra, a Leo, or something else. As we grow, we become a student, a friend, and perhaps an athlete. Then even more roles and identities come along, such as mother, father, wife, or husband. Time goes by, and if we go to work, we may identify as a machinist, a construction, office, or farm worker, an electrician, a plumber, or an architect. We may enlist in the military and become an officer with any number of titles. Entering some profession, we may become known as a teacher, a social or healthcare worker, an engineer, an artist, a musician, a professor, an attorney, or some kind of judge. While traveling or living abroad, we may get identified as a foreigner. And later in life, we may be called a retiree or an esteemed or not so esteemed elder. So many roles, so many titles, so many inherited, assigned, and assumed identities, each with their own social and personal concerns, backdrops, and co-actors. And yet, notwithstanding all the characters we play in the dramas, melodramas, comedies, and tragedies of life, we can clearly see their transient nature, and that not one of them was really me. The most important, the most revered, the most respected, the most rewarded, or least enjoyed was not I. Even as we continue to be a mother, father, grandparent, great-grandparent, or friend, still, these are not I. But before I go further on this point, it would be unwise, irresponsible, and even wrong and insulting to suggest that the roles we have played and the identities we have assumed are not important and not of great significance in framing our characters and personalities, our social psychological experiences, and so often our self-concept and worldviews. And this is especially true with regard to our ethnic, religious, and gender identities, and more notably so in societies and organizations where race, religion, gender, and the like hold sway. And fear of difference, inclusion, and the other remain dominant and result in pushback and systemic discrimination. Our social experiences can overwhelm even the best of us, but none of our roles are or were accidental, and all were designed for learning the best and leaving the rest. And through all of this, what has been so often underplayed, ill-regarded, and even flat out rejected is our true, our real, and our only lasting essential identity as that of a spiritual, self-conscious, self-aware being who is having a temporary human experience where we are all so briefly seen between two unseens. Was I or am I these roles or identities? No. Am I this body? No. But it has certainly played a huge part every day in my life. Am I my mind? No. But it has certainly played an even larger part across the entire stage of my life. Even our language tells us that body and mind are attributes. We say, my body, my mind, clearly something that is mine, something I possess, and yet they are not I. For as magnificent and as powerful as they are, and can be, they come and they go, and indisputably are not I. Both are the instruments of my soul, the tools of my own consciousness that the I am in me has employed to play all these roles and to engage in all manner and loops of thinking and acting. And so we are left with that question, which has been posed by all the world's great philosophers and teachers from time immemorial. Who am I? Who am I is the ultimate question, and even a partial answer, when accepted and digested, can provide enormous and unexpected relief. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And how can I identify or re-identify with that which I most essentially am, with that which will separate from the body and go beyond death? But who is interested? Who is motivated to get to the source, to engage in the inner work that can help us achieve realization of our unchanging and persisting reality? I think I'll stop here. But may I suggest some exploration into what I'd like to call the 4 M's: mantras, mindfulness, meditation, and mind management. These 4 relate to the more concentrated efforts that are part of all genuine spiritual pursuits. And so even a little, or maybe a little more, research and effort along these lines, in whatever ways and measures are comfortable and fit, are bound to be helpful and bring greater insight, inspiration, and personal peace.